Hi everybody, Amber here from Atomik Photography, bringing you tips and tricks on beauty, fashion and travel photography. In this week's video, I'm going to be showing you some of my post-production workflow, taking you from Lightroom through to Photoshop and a new tool that I've discovered called Infinite Color Panel to show you how I edit an image end to end and what the results look like. So I think one of the most common things that I used to get asked in my beauty workshops was around post-production. So a lot of people can get to the point where they shoot something and they've got the images on their memory cards, but then what do you do? How do you create the artwork from what you captured on your camera? So I'm just going to dive into showing you my workflow and the most common things that I do when I'm in post-production. So first off, I like to sort and select my images, and I'll generally shoot between 400 and 700 images per photo shoot. That sounds like a lot, but when you have a fashion shoot, for example, where you've got 8 to 10 different looks that you're capturing, you want to get a variety of images for your clients: portrait images, landscape images, wide shots, close shots, etc. So there'll be a lot of images that you need to go through, and what I do is I import them into Lightroom, and I will first off just do a very quick selection of images that I like, and I will flag those images. So when you click on an image and you flag it, what you can do then is you can apply a filter which only then shows you the flagged images. So out of 643 images, I flagged 185. Of that 185, it starts to get a bit easier now to start to select which images you're actually going to edit. And the way that I try and think about it is I try and think about, if I had to select an image for a double page spread or an advert for my client, which one would I pick? So there's money riding on this. And you want to pick something that has high impact, that evokes an emotional response, that conveys a message of some sort, and is visually, aesthetically pleasing from a composition perspective, etc. So I will go through and then I will turn green. So I click on this green button and I can set a label to green, and those ones will be the ones that I edit. So then if I apply the green filter, you can see that there's actually much fewer images that I've selected to edit. And actually that 46 is probably double the number, because I've edited some of the images already and they've stayed flagged green. Out of these images then, I will then start to edit my images by taking them into Photoshop. So the first thing, like I've shown you here, that's how I will sort and select my images for which ones I'm going to edit. So I quite like this image. It's got a close-up of the lace, there's lots of flowers, there's a beautiful expression. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this image into Photoshop, and I'm going to start to apply some of my most common edits. So if I come into here, I make a copy of the background. The first thing that I will tend to do is any pixel pushing that I need to do. So I go into the liquify tool and I will basically bring in her waist ever so slightly, and I will probably just even out, given the angle that we were shooting at. And I was shorter than the model here, so I do apologise, Symara, who is our model here. So the perspective just gets distorted a little bit, and I will just bring her neck in a little bit. And so I don't like to completely alter how they look, but I will just, given the lenses that I was using, given the angle that I'm standing at, I will just bring the perspective a little bit closer to what I was seeing in reality. and then I'll make another copy of that, and then we'll go into some skin retouching. So I tend to go into the clone tool. I will set the brush to soft and round, and I will look at the pixels here, and I will kind of see some of her. She's got very lovely skin, so we don't have to do very much at all here. I'll generally set it to covering a blemish and a little bit of the surrounds. I put the opacity to about 45, and then I will select an area that is clear, and I will then click on top of the area that I want to clone over. And I do that, and I try and get a nice sample from around the skin so that you don't get sort of, you know, patchiness, patchy areas. So I'm just going to go ahead and carry on doing that, and I will speed up this section so that you don't have to sit here for the 10 or so minutes that I'm doing this. So I'm really liking where we've landed on this image. If I show you a bit of a before and after, and a before and an after, you can see that it's quite a subtle difference. Like I said, she had beautiful skin anyway, so we didn't have to do that much. I then take another copy of that, and I will go into the filter tool. I will then go into unsharp mask, and I will sharpen the image, and it just brings out a bit of that detail. And you can see I don't like to do sort of plastic fantastic editing. I like the texture in her skin. I don't like to completely obliterate eye bags and, you know, detail under the eyes. It just doesn't look natural. It doesn't look right. Something looks a bit off with the image when you do stuff like that. So yeah, I'm liking how this is looking. I will, after I've done the beauty retouching and evening out of the skin, I like to go into dodging and burning. And so if you go into the dodge tool, if you hit the highlights, it will give you quite a hard sort of highlight to the image. I'm just going to undo that. And so we had, obviously she's got quite heavy makeup on. She was also in a lot of bushes and getting pollen on her face. And so there was just some slight sort of patchiness on her skin. So I'm just going to even that out with some of the lighting tool. And I set my exposure to about 19%, 20% mid-tones, and it gives you a much softer lightening effect. And I'm just going to look at some of the darker patches on her skin just to even it out a little bit and to make her skin tone look ever so slightly smoother. And then I will just bring out her button nose and the chin highlight a little bit. So I accentuate some of the existing lighting. The direction of the light is coming from the top right and hitting sort of the top part of her face, catching her nose, catching her chin, and catching her cheekbones. So I just try and bring out some of that a little bit as well. And then if I turn off some of these middle layers, you can see a before and an after, a before and an after. So it's a very, very subtle but distinct change to the image. So you can see that that's starting to look really, really pretty, but it's not too far away from what the original was. I like to keep things natural. So what I'm going to do now is I had an effect that I was in some of the images I actually did shoot through flowers and get a sort of a bokeh effect or a depth of field effect where it looked like the flowers were fuzzy. I haven't been able to do that with this particular flower bush, so I'm going to fake it and I'll show you how I fake the flower effect. So if I just take a patch of flowers and take a sort of a squiggly wiggly patch of flowers, I'm going to Control C, Control V to copy that set of flowers, and then I go into the transform tool and I make them really massive. I'll then go into the filter tool, I will go into blur, I will go into Gaussian blur, and then I want this Gaussian blur to be massive so that it really fuzzes them out. So I'd probably go to about 80, maybe even more, 120 pixels. So that's then my fake flowers. I will bring the opacity on those down and I basically move them around. I'm probably going to put them up here. I might rotate them a little bit so that the dark patches are a little bit lower. Yeah, and I quite like that effect. To copy that and just balance out that aesthetic so that we have some maybe here, if I hit Alt and just move that layer, it copies it for me and I can put that here as well. So I quite like that effect and how that's looking, and I think I'm done with my Photoshop edits. So once I've edited my image from a beauty, retouch, sharpening, liquefying, any physical elements that I want to add to the image, I then sort of, the last thing that I think about is the color tone of the image. And sometimes there are some photo shoots where you will go into a photo shoot thinking about the color toning. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just take the images and you feel the color tone in the post-production. And I actually, for this particular photo shoot, had a color tone in mind. I knew that the photo shoot was going to be warm. I wanted it to feel warm, romantic, inviting. The flowers are soft. Her expression is lovely in this image. I definitely feel quite strongly that this is going to be a warm toned photo shoot. I also wanted a bit of a retro feel to it as well, so I'll have a look and see what Infinite Color Panel can give me. And this is a really handy tool. I'm absolutely loving it at the moment. And what it does is, based on a number of common layers that you would create to color grade an image, on hitting the create, it will automatically create some of those options for you. So if I hit create and show you what I mean, it's created me quite a cool tone, and I guess that that's based on all the pink that's here. But it's created me a color lookup, selective color, color balance, and curve set of layers in a group. If I hit the create button again, magic, it gives me another set of color grading. It gives me another set if I hit create again. And this is much warmer. This is closer to what I was thinking. If I hit the create button a couple more times, I can toggle through and see the options that it can give me, which is an amazingly powerful tool for people, particularly if you haven't set in your mind what your color tone and your color grading needs to be. You can then go through and toggle through and get what you want to land on. I quite like the warmer ones, so let's come back to something that's a bit more warm. So that's quite a warm tone. You can also shuffle through each layer by layer, and I've done a tutorial on an introduction to Infinite Color Panel, so I'm not going to go through each of the features of the panel today. Generally what I find is I like to change the color balance a little bit, and if I start to hit the shuffle button, it will give me some different options. So yeah, I'm liking what I'm seeing. And so if I take away that color balance, you can see it was a bit cold, it was a bit cooler as it was originally shot, and this has warmed it up. I think that's kind of making it a little bit too pink, so I'm just going to bring the opacity of that colour balance down a little bit. I'm probably going to have it at about 70% mark. So now if I take the last set of edits that we've done on this image and I put them into a group, I can then easily show you the before image, the after image, the before and the after. So you can see that all of those edits have given us a different mood of image and has just upped the game in terms of the quality of the aesthetic of the image, and it looks really, really pretty. So I'm really happy with that. I will then hit save. And we come back into Lightroom. So that comes back into Lightroom and you can see that my edit is here, stacked against the original. So you can see that's the before and that's the after. And even with that colour grading, there is extra colour grading you can do in Lightroom. And it's just really easy to pull things like the tint down. I think her skin was a bit too pink in that. I could have done this in Photoshop, but it's so much easier in Lightroom sometimes to just play around. I'm going to bring the exposure up, and that is the final image that I am settling on. Yeah, I hope you like it. So there you have my most common workflow from Lightroom to Photoshop to colour grading and back into Lightroom again. I hope you found that useful. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button. I hope to see you again on my channel very soon. Take care, guys. Bye.